Hello everyone. This video will be going over the use of the distance formula. Okay, so the distance formula is just distance equals rate of speed times time. Or you'll see it as D equals RT. Okay, so this is the formula you'd use if you were solving for distance. Okay, now let's say if you had your distance equals rate times time and you divided both sides by R. Okay, so you divide both sides by R, you're just left with the T. So your T is equal to D over R. Now this is what you'd use if you were solving for time. Okay, so they usually give you the distance and the rate, and you have to solve for time. Alright, so let's say you started out with your distance equals rate times time, and you divided both sides by T. T divided by T is 1, so that cancels out. So that leaves you with, let's move this up a little bit, your R is equal to D over T. So if they give you the distance and the time, this is how you can solve for the rate of speed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead to our first example. If you are still writing, please feel free to press pause. We're going to go to our first example now. Alright. So let's say, for example, Stacy drove 7 hours at 40 miles per hour. What distance did she drive? Alright. So we see here, they gave us distance. Well, we're solving for distance. So we know that we're going to use distance equals rate times time. Okay, we can see here, 7 hours, that's your time. Okay, so time, or just your T, is 7. 40 miles per hour, that's your rate of speed. So your rate of speed, or just your R, will be 40. So all you have to do is replace your T with 7 and your R with 40. That means your distance equals rate times time, means distance equals your rate, which is 40, times time, which is 7. So that means your distance is 280 miles. Okay, so if you drove 7 hours at 40 miles per hour constant the whole way through, you drive 280 miles. Alright, so let's go to our next example. Remember, if you're still writing, feel free to press pause. Okay, so Rose took a bus from Vegas to San Francisco. And we know that's a distance of 506 miles per hour. Oh, 506 miles, sorry about that. If the trip took 7 2/3 hours, what was the speed of the bus? Okay, so whenever you see what was the speed, they're asking us to solve for the rate. Okay, so again, we start off with distance equals rate times time. Since we have to solve for the rate, we have to get the R by itself. So we divide both sides by T, where that cancels out. So rate equals distance over time. So rate equals distance over time. Okay, so we can see that by what was given up here, our time is equal to 7 2/3. All right. Now, if you remember how to convert a mixed number, when you have a whole number and a fraction or a whole number and a decimal, when you have a whole number and a fraction, you can convert it to an improper fraction. That's where your numerator is bigger than your denominator. You just get your denominator, so you go 3 times 7, which is 21, and you add the numerator, so it's 23. Okay, so we know that time is equal to 23 over 3. Okay, and we see here you drove a distance of 506 miles. So we know that distance, or just d, is equal to 506. Let me straighten that up a little. So that's 506. Alright, so if we go ahead, I'm going to show you a little trick. So if we know r equals distance divided by time, we can rewrite it, and you only have to really do this when you have fractions and mixed numbers involved. You have r equals d divided by t. Okay, the exact same thing. So you didn't change anything, you just rewrote it from division to division a different way. Okay, since we know distance is 506 and time is 23 over 3, that means that our rate is equal to 506 divided by 23 over 3. Okay, now this is where we have to go back and remember our rules for dividing fractions. Okay, so to do that, you remember that 506 is the same as 506 divided by 1. So let me straighten up that, get that a little, there you go. Okay, so instead of 506, we're going to replace that with 506 over 1. So we have 506 over 1. Alright, so if you remember your rules for dividing fractions, you write down your first fraction. So we have 506 over 1. The second step is your division changes to multiplication. Then your third step is you flip the second fraction. So instead of 23 over 3, you make it 3 over 23. Okay. Now, before you go any further, you can actually simplify this. Okay, because 506 is just 22 times 23. Okay, slide this up a little bit. Okay, so let me just move that arrow there. So 506 equals 22 times 23. Okay, so that means if you have the rate is equal to, instead of 506, make it 22 times 23 times 3 over 1 times 23. These 23s cancel each other out. So that means the rate is equal to 22 times 3 over 1. So the rate is equal to 22 times 3 is 66 over 1, or just 66 miles per hour. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and do another video. Another example. So what if we try to solve this one? Let's say if Carl drove 4 and 5/6 hours at 60 miles per hour, what distance did he travel? Okay, so with this one, I want you to solve this one using the same steps from the previous example. Okay, so go ahead and press pause, and when we come back, we'll solve this one. Alright, so I'm assuming you have pressed pause, you've worked this one out. So when they say what distance, it means we're solving for distance. So distance equals rate times time. Okay, so we can see here that our time is 4 and 5/6 hours. So time is 4 and 5/6 hours. But remember, we're going to convert that to an improper fraction. So 6 times 4 is 24, plus 5 is 29. So that means time is equal to 29 over 6. Okay, we traveled for 60 miles per hour, so we know that our rate is 60. So we just go ahead and replace T and R with those two values. So distance equals the rate, which is 60, times the time, which is 29 over 6. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, now remember what we did before. 60 is just 60 over 1. So we can make that 60 over 1 times 29 over 6. And we can simplify this because the 6 and the 60 actually has a value that can cancel out. So remember that 60 equals 6 times 10. So that means that our distance is equal to, instead of 60, we can put 6 times 10 times 29 over 1 times 6. What we see here, our 6's both cancel each other out. So we're left with 10 times 29 over 1. So that distance equals 290 over 1, or just 290 miles. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do one more example. And I want you to try this one. So Max is traveling from Dayton to Chicago. The distance is 300 miles, and he is traveling at a steady rate of 60 miles per hour. How long will the bus ride be? So I want you to go ahead and press pause and work this one out on your own. Alright, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and you're all done. So we're going to go ahead and solve it. So you can see here, how long will the bus ride be? When you see how long or anything like that, you're just going to solve for time. Okay, so if we have our distance equals rate times time, and divide both sides by r, we have time is equal to distance over rate. Time equals distance over rate. Okay, so we see here that the distance is 300 miles, so the distance is 300. And we can see the rate is 60 miles per hour. So rate equals 60. So that means time would equal distance, 300, over the rate, which is 60. So 300 divided by 60 is 5. So that means your time is equal to 5 hours. Alright, so hopefully that made sense and gave you an idea of how to solve distance problems. And I will see you on the next video.